It is a Victory Monday, 8 minutes past 8. Alan Quinlan is here. Alan, how are you?
Morning, lads. Yeah, good, thanks.
The greatest Six Nations game of all time?
So some people are saying. I wasn't there. I was in Murrayfield, so I was watching as well as many others. Yeah, I think it was an unbelievable game, wasn't it? Frantic, great skill, great pace, tempo to the game. Two best teams in the world, and sometimes we've spoken about the label of one and where you're ranked. Sometimes it's justified, and sometimes you're kind of a little bit.
Yeah.
But Ireland deserve the credit now, and I think we're all going to be still a little bit sceptical, not get too far ahead. But on the balance of what we've seen, not just in that game, I go back to New Zealand and even the previous November, where they beat Japan, New Zealand, Argentina. The performances there. Andy Farrell's done an incredible job.
There's a couple of things, right? We shouldn't get carried away, but actually the joy of sport is trying to feel alive, and we should get a little bit carried away, because this is about as good as it gets.
Yeah, you have to enjoy it, and ultimately we all keep saying we're going to be judged at the World Cup, and you could do brilliantly now, and you come unstuck at the World Cup. You just saw what happened in the Soccer World Cup, the way people are devastated and upset when it happens, when you're knocked out and you're a fancied team. Ireland are going to be fancied at the World Cup now. A lot of English journalists and people online actually really giving Ireland massive credit for the way they're playing, the system, the composure, the fitness levels, the skill levels, all that kind of stuff. You go back 2 years ago, but this team was getting questioned. They lost their opening fixture in 2021 to Wales and then to France. It was blunt against Italy a little bit. Won in Scotland with that late penalty from Johnny Sexton, 27-24 I think, and then the performance against England was the one that kind of kick-started the attack progression. And we'd heard a lot of players say, well, we're working hard on attack and we believe in the system, and my cat was under pressure. So coaches and players always have dips and low points and times where you have to dig in, and I think the progression of this team has been nothing short of phenomenal, really. The way
that's the key thing for me is that Johnny was asking earlier on, like, what's the difference between this time, or maybe it was Colin, what's the difference between this time and 4 years ago? And the difference is that our game is improving. The players are getting better. It's not like we've discovered a thing that works and we're going to get really good at that and we're going to just focus on that. So when the game was kind of in balance, we decided to start kicking for the corners and turn them around, which, we're not just one thing.
And I think for me, the thing, Ger, is I felt even when France were putting on that pressure and got that try in the first half from Penot, it was a wonderful try. I genuinely felt Ireland would go up the field and score again. You just get that feeling about this team that even if someone attacks them back, and historically, you're hanging on and in a big game and you're nervous, God, what will the All Blacks do and what will England do or South Africa against you? Now you just feel that these guys have a level of composure and control and belief in themselves, and that has to come from the boss. Andy Farrell has done a remarkable job here. I think their biggest strength with respect to the players is collectively they're all at just a high level of diligence in what they're doing, fitness level, skill level. We don't have X-factor geniuses who can run out over people and just do something out of nothing and something special in the game. But they're all at such a high level. And there's probably 8 or 10 of this team, if you were picking a World 15, even before the weekend, that you'd saying would be in the conversation because their form has been so good with Ireland.
We obviously have X-factor in the forwards, so where you're like, are these lads like top?
They're not the biggest players in the world, Johnny. They're not like, they're not an Eben Etzebeth for South Africa, who's just freakishly big. But they're absolutely excellent players. James Ryan is back playing superbly. What Finlay Bealham has done in the last 2 weeks.
I think Finlay Bealham is a really interesting case study where we were all very concerned about what would happen. Tadhg Furlong is one of the unmissables. If Tadhg Furlong goes down, what are we going to do? If James Gibson Park goes down, what are we going to do? If Sexton goes down, what are we going to do? Now it's like if Hugo Keenan goes down, okay, fair enough. I'm not sure what we're going to do. But like all of those did go
Matt
down.
Kenson probably goes in full back. Yeah, that's it. And I think just from Andy Farrell, I think he's really interesting to listen to. And if you're at one of these press conferences, I remember being at the press conference in Dunedin. I don't know if I've said this to you. Second test, they've just been beaten well in Auckland. Glass half full for them because and really when I watched the game back, that first test in Auckland, I looked, there was lots of opportunities and there was certain things that just didn't go Ireland's way. They believed it, and I felt straight after the game they were all saying, well, if this happened and we need to do X, Y and Z for next week, and we think if we get that right, and it's just one of those days that things didn't go right. And he was at the press conference in Dunedin on the Thursday, and he was literally telling the journalists there that this is what I love. I loved what's happening. I love the challenge. I love the fact that our backs are to the wall, and that mentally we're going to be really tested again in a bit of a cauldron down in Dunedin. And I just found it intriguing to think that he believed that mentally they were in the right place, and this was a real challenge, and it was one that he would embrace as a player himself, because that's the way he played. At 17 he's playing for Great Britain Rugby League. Unbelievable player, mental strength. And I just sensed that he was sitting at the top table saying...
Never seems to be about him either.
I'd love to be going out onto the field to play the All Blacks in the second test here. And that's what I want my players to feel. And I want them to be tested and stressed mentally and physically. It's not about him, Johnny. You're right. Yeah, and he's a lovely mood. But look, they're in a good place at the moment, and the coach has created that environment.
A couple of things about that too, because I just want to delve into that. In Portugal, apparently, I can't remember where I read this today, but there was a game where they played 15 on 15 and they tore lumps out of each other, and afterwards apparently Sexton said, "Jesus, it's very hard to tell which is the first team here." And like we heard this about Kilkenny when they were at their absolute peak, that they'd have 2 15s to win the All-Ireland. And then we heard the same about the Dubs. The hardest game they're getting is in but like all the great teams feel that. Whether or not it's true, if they believe that, it creates this incredible sense of power.
The reality is everybody out there knows 10, 12, 13 of those players that are going to start. But the point he's making is a really interesting one, that the level of the guys behind is increasing, the way they're training, the way they're challenging the so-called first team.
Yeah.
When they get a chance to run at them, that they're not kind of accepting a tackle and saying, well, look, this is the way it should be. They're actually getting stuck in and they're actually attacking them. So Andy Farrell has capped 30 players since he's taken over, which is a big number in a World Cup cycle. Now, given, you had Japan and USA in 2021 fixtures. Last year they were in New Zealand. So there was no tour in 2020 because of COVID.
Yeah.
They were supposed to go to Australia. So he's capped 30 players. Selected 66 before the start of the Six Nations. So
right.
Last week and this week, I don't know, would there be a few more? I don't think so. But it's up over. The numbers are very high. So you still get a lot of familiar faces that we can pick. But if you look back to 2019 and the loss to New Zealand, there's 8 or 9 different players on the starting team. So he's done a really good job in turning that around. Simon Easterby, Paul O'Connell, John Fogarty, deserve massive credit. Mike Catt as well. So we're not getting to a point here that we've the World Cup won. Ultimately, and we keep saying it, if you get out of the group, Scotland are going to be a problem in that group. You're playing France or New Zealand in a quarter-final. They could still be beaten on their day there, but they're in a good place, so we might as well enjoy it now and give them credit.
Just the fitness thing you mentioned, like how noticeable is that? Because like our last try, the French lads are almost falling into each other. I think they're getting tired.
Yeah.
And like you look at James Ryan's hit, I think it was like near the goal line, this massive hit like late in the game.
It's the hunger, Johnny, and
like Doris said, the first half was one of the toughest first halves he's ever endured.
Yeah.
Yet second half we're finishing like we were dominant in the second half. Really,
we've been focused on the figures. The piece we do with Derek McNamara, and there'll be another one tomorrow about the length of time that the ball is in play and how World Rugby's rules have shifted, and they've actually shifted in our favour that the game is trying to speed up, trying to have more ball
so the
play
game
time.
they want to play, opposition can't slow it down. Now, if you're leading a game and you're trying to manage a score in bad weather, it'd be nice to have a little huddle before the line out.
Yeah.
And a few times Wayne Barnes and even the other games of the weekend, which is great, teams walking slowly into line outs, having a little bit of a chat. They're being told get in quickly. So yeah, the game is speedy. They're trying to make it quicker, which is important to what Ireland are doing. I like the fact that they kicked a lot as well.
So many kicks in the game.
It's unbelievable. If I give you the stats now, when you didn't hear the result and said, well, Ireland kicked the ball 39 times, France kicked it 37 times, you'd be like, Borefest. But it's the type of kicking. It wasn't thumping it out the touch. They were tactically kicking at times, crossfield kicks. And a really important part of the performance of the weekend was that Ireland didn't run back at France. They actually... It is a little bit boring when it's gone on for a minute or two, but France want to play in your half. They want to smother you, overpower you, kick the ball long, hope that you run back. And it's the length of kicks from Intermac and Dupont. They're going for distance, and they want you to run back and do something silly and get turned over, kick a penalty, a goal, or kick it into the corner.
Yeah.
And then when they're in that strike zone, they have X-factor players. They have power. They have steppers. Dupont is the best rugby player in the world by a country mile. He's just phenomenal. If you take him out of that France team, they need to wrap him in cotton wool for the World Cup. And the other thing is, France are going to learn a lot from that defeat. So, number one, Galtier and Sean Edwards, maybe fitness, maybe the way they played. They threw a bit of caution to the wind early on in that first half. So you would say they maybe added to their own downfall a little bit. Territorially, they're normally on top. So Ireland won the 64% territory and 54% possession.
Do you think they regret taking 3 points earlier when they would have been able to kick for the corner and get their maul going?
I think if they look back on it, yes. But I think they were giving Ireland respect. There's no guarantee you'll score that maul now, because Ireland have become incredibly good at defending mauls, and that's down to Paul O'Connell.
How long has that taken, actually?
It's probably it takes time. Sometimes we saw it in November, so we've evidence of it in November when South Africa are trying to maul Ireland. I think South Africa had 20-something phases, remember, in that early on in that game, and Ireland were under a lot of pressure, but they held their line, they defended them all. So they become really efficient. The other crazy stat in the game is Ireland missed 38 tackles. So again, it's another stat if I presented you this morning and you said, well, one team missed 38 tackles here, you'd say, well, they probably lost the game. A lot of it was just incredible evasion. Like, I was doing, looking back at certain aspects of good defence from Ireland, and in certain parts of that good defence, there was 2 missed tackles in this phase, 3 missed tackles here. It was guys just falling off the hips, another guy trying to scramble, and then the third guy would make him. It wasn't massive ground that France had made. But the stats were crazy in the game, and it was a phenomenal game, you know, just to see what pundits and journalists are saying about it. So we have to celebrate it and say, look, they're in a really good place.
Yeah, we should enjoy this.
It'll be
a great yardstick for to beat us with if we go out in the quarter-final, which ultimately is a flick of a coin, really, no matter what kind of form you're in going into that World Cup. You play France at home in a World Cup quarter-final, it's going to be phenomenally difficult.
The French fans, like, for me, that was an amazing aspect of it. Sexton said before the game, I grew up like watching Ireland generally lose to France. The French fans, they gave this impression like, we're up for this, but we're underdogs here. Like, we need to get behind this team. And the atmosphere was unbelievable. It was absolutely unbelievable.
In the last kind of 10 or 15 years, the results in Dublin have been really good against France. And we've gone to Paris a good few times and won. But the French fans at the weekend, and they really feel that this is a new era for them, winning the Grand Slam last year. The coaching team, they've an incredibly high number of players they can select from in the top 14. So their depth chart is... And they're missing a couple of players as well. They're missing Jonathan Dante at centre, Waukee and Villiers. Yeah. They're probably 3 that start from. Ireland have an argument. There's no argument. There's 4 that will definitely start. Furlong, Sheehan, Gibson Park and Robbie Henshaw.
Yeah,
they're 4 starters.
In the World Cup, we're actually, by the time we get to a quarter-final, if we make it there, there's no chance of us having everybody available, because that's just how it works.
So and that's the word he used, stressed, doesn't he? Ireland have been stressed in the first 2 fixtures, and that's what he wants. He's planning for that. go back to 2015 against Argentina when you had no Paul O'Connell, Sean O'Brien, Tommy Bowe, Johnny Sexton and Peter O'Mahony for Argentina. All gone after the France game. Brilliant win against France. You've you're top the group. You're playing France or Argentina the week after. There's 5 of them gone. And it affected the mentality of the team. Yeah. And I think obviously it was a very good Argentinian side, but there was changes in personnel, positional changes in that game, and it messed. It took away that opportunity. So even from a mental point of view, Ger, you know, any good team, if 3 of your top players are out, everyone drops the heads. I've been there before in teams where we've been missing certain players, and you're kind of going, God, he's an awful loss, and it's the undertone is they're a loss. Whereas now, ideally, you want to get to a point where, okay, and I think the biggest plus for Ireland on Saturday was Ross Byrne's performances when Johnny Sexton went off. He went off early in that second half.
Yeah.
And there was no kind of hairy...
49 minutes gone, I think.
There was no kind of situation where we went, oh God, wish Sexton was on. Sexton is at a different level, but I just think Ross Byrne has...
Our attacking play didn't
He's now got
disappear.
An incredible surge of confidence.
Yeah.
And he feels, you know, this is my chance and this is my moment in time, which is really good.
Let's talk briefly then about... So afterwards, Farrell says, of the 23 players, only 10 of them were available to go to commercial, which I think is what happens afterwards.
They go up into corporate boxes and stuff like that, which is part of the gig, and they have to do it.
Yeah, so 13 of them were unavailable because of like knocks. Okay, so clearly it was... you know, strewn all around the place, and we wait to see what the story is with Tadhg Beirne. I think he's going first.
Of the 13 that were unavailable, there's about 5 or 6 of them who lean on a bit of a knock or a bruise, which is very shrewd. I'd probably be one of them as well. But so there's about 6 or 7 that can't go, and then there's about 6 or 7 who are bluffing it a little bit. And the physio or the doctor is not going to get. No, I'm only joking.
But of those, right, obviously, Tadhg Beirne is the most serious, and we really hope that there's nothing too long term. Like, if he misses the rest of the Six Nations but is grand for the summer, like the World Cup, from Tadhg Beirne's perspective, I think, is all that matters, right? From Ireland's perspective.
What about Munster? Like, well, poor Munster fellas,
You're going to have R.G. Snyman back.
Maybe, yeah. No, look, his injury looked... We don't have an update. Maybe there'll be an update today. He went for a scan yesterday, I think, and it didn't look great. But... there would be a lot of bruised and battered bodies after that.
Do you take this now as an opportunity? So Robbie Henshaw is back training with the group, and as far as we know, because he did a piece with us, it was always the Italy game was his. So you stick Robbie Henshaw back in the team. Do you start Bundy? Do you give Ringrose a week off? Do you give...
He's a week off this weekend.
But like
the natural inclination here is to think we make 10, 12 changes, and
or it's not. Maybe it's 4. Maybe it's 4 changes.
It's 4 or 5 changes at max, and you load the bench a bit. There's certain guys that you would like to see, give him a little bit of a look. And Gavin Coombs, we know Ryan Baird has played. He's a couple of caps, and he's an incredible player. He needs to probably come into the mix. Bundy Aki probably needs game time. Whether he goes back with Connacht and plays in the URC this weekend, I don't know. But Joe McCarthy. There's a couple of them there that you could argue need a shot at it, or need to be on the bench anyway, and get a mix, feel part of this.
But what changes are you making for the Italy game then?
I don't know. I think Ryan Baird will come in. Gavin Coombs should come into the mix
to start, or Coombs on the bench, Baird to start.
To
give Caelan Doris a week off.
Yeah, I don't know, because like for me as a player, if I'm playing starting on the Irish team now, my weekend off is next weekend. Right. I'm getting a break. Do you want, if they don't play there, effectively some of them don't play for 3 or 4 weeks, for nearly 4 weeks. So they'll be chomping at the bit to be involved and to play, and so there's probably 3 or 4 changes. I think Ryan Baird, if Tadhg Beirne, and you just assume Tadhg Beirne is going to be out of that picture, he may be back. If it's not too bad, he might be back for the Scotland game. Who knows? But Ryan Baird and Gavin Coombs are the 2 come to mind. Maybe start Kilcoyne. Andrew Porter is going hard for a fair part of the season as well. So, and Bundy Aki's the other one. Jamie Osborne, does he come into the picture and get a run, get a start? Maybe it could happen. But you want to respect Italy and not make wholesale changes.
So Ross Byrne starts?
Again, Sexton is a weekend off next weekend, you know what I mean? So it depends on what the injury's like. So it's possibly Ross Byrne as well. So I don't know what they're thinking, and they'll give us the logic when they kind of pick it. But you would think 4 or 5 changes, and you've got to keep it strong enough, though. You can't make 8 or 9 changes and suddenly think it's going to happen, because it's not that the players underneath wouldn't perform, but it's just that cohesion that's very strong at the moment. Rob Herring situation, not sure what's going to happen with him, and will Dan Sheehan come back? But that tackle on Saturday, there's no point in us going into it in depth. Everybody's had their opinion. It should have been a red card, and
do you know, for me, it wasn't much the tackling. Clearly, it was a red card. The most horrifying aspect of that game for me was the fact that he took that hit. I was very close to it, and I was like, Jesus Christ. I was like, oh my God, like, to see a hit like that. He got himself up, and he picked up the ball very shortly afterwards, and he's
tried
like,
to pass
all over the shop. And I was like, how is a situation where this fella is basically has to play on, and he seemed to be playing on when I don't know what's going through like his body or head at that moment. And I thought that was horrible to see, because God knows where he was
there's
at.
a lot of people have a strong opinion on that, saying when you get a head knock, straight off. So I've been a big advocate for this. To be fair, people can accuse me of not being very pro the protection of the players. The issue you have there, Johnny, is sometimes it can seem worse than what it is, and I mean that respectfully. The initial hit, you're not really sure. It's a big collision. What's the effect of the impact? Obviously, when he tries to pick up the ball, he's kind of stumbling a bit, and then that's the point where you go, wow, you need to get this player off. There's a delay in him actually leaving the field. And with respect to the process, the independent match doctor at that point is now looking at footage. So we had a problem with that in Australia with the Nick White thing, where the footage was, he was looking at one shot when Nick White got a second bang off the line out. So there is an issue there and needs to be spoke about, and World Rugby came out and spoke about that process. In the situation on Saturday, the independent match doctor is looking at footage. He needs to look at footage. You can't just pull a player off the field if it looks like that he's had a knock. We need to see some of the evidence of the imbalance and all that kind of stuff. So there's a little bit of a delay there, and in their defence, they're looking at footage there, and then obviously when they see the footage, he's off.
Should the play just stop? when something like that happens, should they just stop the play?
There's an argument
this
to
is
say
far
yes.
more important
Yeah,
than,
there's
like,
an argument to say
critique
yes. There's an argument to say yes.
Anyone watching that, as much as I didn't need a replay to know, like, he was in a bad way after that. He had to be.
Yeah.
I guess the reason that they don't stop play immediately is because you can then start having people faking that type of situation.
That's the situation that can happen.
And
so we brought in,
that same play, which is horrific to think that somebody might be risking long-term brain injury for the sake of gameplay. But I guess the one counter argument to the footage is, right, Wayne Barnes goes, there's a whiplash. Now, that seemed, the whiplash, he used the word whiplash when he's talking to the whiplash seemed to be a factor which was diminishing so it looks worse than it is, but actually, like, if you think there's a bit of whiplash, then there's a potential suspected
And the words
concussion.
were used as there wasn't a high level of danger.
Didn't make any sense. It just he seemed to back himself into a corner with that, and also with the on-field decision to try. So you have to be absolutely certain that his foot's touched the ground, which is
James Lowe's try.
Definitely wasn't a try.
No, his foot touched the ground.
Yeah. Was it a no arms tackle?
His arm is tucked fairly tight. Now, you think he might be trying to target the ball at that situation, but his arm's got to be up here. He's got to dip, Antonio. So he knew it straight away. He's very much relieved.
You were talking about the
for the try, James Lowe's try. Yes, Pinot doesn't use his arms.
Is there any argument then that that's actually it's a penalty try?
It balances itself out. Yes, possibly. He doesn't try to tackle James Lowe with a wrapped arm. He's trying to get his two hands are trying to go through where the ball is.
Apart from the massive two egregious errors that Wayne Barnes made, otherwise he refereed.
He did, yeah. He really did. Yeah. Look, it's in fairness, there was some tempo to the game. It was unbelievable. Ireland very fortunate with the James Lowe one. Antonio should have been red, and in a sense, maybe it's better it didn't happen from would we been saying, well, against 14 men, and it worked out fine that way. But Rob Herring's injury, and the knock he took was of high impact, and it was dangerous, and there was
It's obviously dangerous. Like, and
you look at Matthew Carley's face when he's going yellow. He's like,
yeah. Wayne Barnes on the ref link was like, "Oh, I'm taking the assist for that after the try got scored because he had to duck out of the way when inside the French 22," which I thought was quite funny. But I thought, like, apart from that, as I say, massive.
No,
errors.
he did. He's a brilliant referee, and look,
Is this like, just a quick question? Is this the best French team that there has been?
We'll see.
yeah.
And Ireland beat them fairly comfortably. Like,
We did beat them comfortably. That's the thing.
they did beat them comfortably, regardless of decisions. They
France
did beat
played
them
well.
Yeah, Ireland were.
Ireland scored 3 tries. They
Time
were
within
held up
22,
4
like,
times
like-
over the line.
Yeah.
So that's
like held up, what, 3 or 4 times when it looked
Yeah.
certain to score.
That's the reality of it, and looked fairly comfortable. I think France tactically would do things a bit different.
Yeah.
Would we win that game in France?
We weren't getting
Possibly,
we weren't
yeah.
getting that try. They're
We
finding
did,
that
but-
angle straight away.
But 7 or 8 decisions in the game last year that Ireland lost went against Ireland.
Yeah.
So France will have their video footage today, and they'll be going back to the referee saying, well, this, and this should have been different. So
How good are Scotland? Greg Mallon says the Ireland pack will destroy the Scottish pack. Scottish backs won't do anything without the ball, bar defend. I don't know if their pack is going to be destroyed by anybody.
no,
is it?
they're not going to be destroyed. They're very competitive. I think they've got a little bit of edge about them now. Richie Gray and Gilchrist, a problem area from, even though they've been there a while, and Richie Gray's been out of the setup, come back in. They're playing well from really good back row. Crosby, Fagerson, and Richie. They're
depth
dogs,
and
like, you know.
experience now.
Yeah, it's again, if and Finn Russell was really good in that second half. They've Hugh Jones is a really good player in the centre, so they feel good about themselves. Consistency's always been a problem for them. That's the first time since the early mid-90s since they won 2 games at home, or 2 games in a row in the Six Nations. So they'll be a serious threat for Ireland. There's no doubt about that. Wales are really poor. Pardon?
Bigger threat than England, Scotland away.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah, I think so. There's no doubt about that. They were very good in the second half. Wales were poor. They look in big trouble, and it was a poor first half, poorly executed by both sides. But Scotland, better team by a mile.
Wales are flaky enough that if they'd scored that try at the end of the first half,
yeah,
then
they're
who
right
knows?
back in the game.
Do you know?
And
but they're so flaky that because they didn't, it's like, oh, that's it, it's game over.
they look like they've just got to go way back and just start all over again, find a game plan, execute their attack better. It's hard to say they're badly coached, but they just looked so blunt in attack and not really sure what to do. So they've a lot of work to do, and probably the team that Warren Gatland picked on Saturday should have been the team he picked against Ireland.
Yeah.
And there'd be less pressure. Shunza, the back row, was probably one bright spark for him. They've Tommy Raffel in there, Jack Morgan, young players, Daffy Jenkins in the second row. So they've 5 or 6 20, 21, 22-year-olds, and he's got to change it up. And they left out all that experience and dropped Alan Quinlan Jones, Tipperick, Falatau. So
they have a nice handy World Cup draw though, so they can still.
They're
be
on the right
semi-finalists.
side, yeah. You can imagine they'll still be thereabouts. He'll probably muster a team together and get some of these players believing in themselves. They're good players, but they have a lot of work to do.
So in short, we're going to win the World Cup. Get on board the hype train.
You said it, not me, Ger. No, I don't think so. It's a long way off, and no matter what happens between now and then, it's still going to be incredibly difficult.
This is as good as it's ever been.
Yeah, here and now they're brilliant, and they're playing brilliantly, and I think it's not just.
It does feel a bit different as well, doesn't it?
Even sometimes you feel that if you meet English and Welsh people and French people and say, "Oh, Ireland, great, they'll win the Six Nations," that you're going, "Yeah, right." You really mean that now? You're just being nice, but I met Sam Warburton the other day and Yannick Nyanga, and they're like, this Irish team is incredibly good. They're really taking notice of what they're doing, and you can analyse them all you want, and there's certainly areas. The obvious ones are, will we go after Ireland physically, slow their breakdown? They're the very obvious ones. The same with Leinster, but analysing what they're doing and knowing it and seeing it, it's still very, very hard to stop them, because they're just non-stop in how they're doing it, and their execution is really good.
Just a word about Conor Murray and his performance. His performance levels are at the very highest levels they've ever been in his entire career, and an incredibly difficult week for him as well.
Yeah, it was a really difficult week, and his father's a lovely man, and it was very unfortunate, and we hope he recovers, and send him our best wishes. My mother said to me last week, "Oh God, Jerry Murray was so lovely when we have any of the parents get-togethers. He always brings me out dancing, and he's so nice to me." And it's funny when you hear those kind of things, and the way the parents all kind of have that connection. But yeah, it's a really tough week to have that sort of distraction and to go out and play then. And I know if it was my dad or if it was in that situation, that they'd want you to play, and I'm sure Conor based his decision to be involved on Dad would want me to play. So, but it's still a hard thing to deal with, a very difficult thing. And he played really well, and I think the week before in Wales, and it's a nice period for him now, given a couple of weeks previous he wasn't in the 23 for Northampton for Munster. So
it's incredible.
What did you make of Sexton?
His attitude has been really good, though. I think his attitude, and that's the key to it.
What did you make of Sexton just during the anthems? I was blown away by it at the time. It was like he was.
It was specifically Ireland's call, it wasn't?
Totally, the Ireland's call. He was just totally emotional.
I know. He's loving being putting on the jersey, and that hunger and drive is just gone to a level that he was looking around.
He was looking around during that, and it did have the feel of like this could be my second last or my last time here, you know. And hopefully there's a Heineken Cup final, but maybe Ross Byrne will be in ahead of him. Who knows? Right, we've gone a bit over, but sure, why not? Because Ireland are the best team in the world. Quinny, good stuff.
Cheers, lads.
Brayburn